The room was dark. The child had been put to bed 2 hours before, and now the father stood in the doorway, looking in, not quite willing to cross the threshold. He only knew that something had changed in his house, something he could not name and could not locate, but felt in the particular way a parent feels things in the chest, not the mind. It had started small. The boy, 7 years old, would wake at the same hour every night, not screaming something quieter than screaming. He would sit up in bed and stare at the corner of the room to the left of the closet. He would not answer when spoken to. His eyes were open, but the quality of his gaze was wrong in a way I have come to recognize and that I will describe in a moment. After a few minutes, he would lie back down and sleep until morning, with no memory of it. His parents wrote it off as sleepwalking in the beginning, but it happened again and again, same corner, same hour. 40 minutes after midnight, the father came to me eventually. By then, the child had developed a fear of the crucifix in the hallway. Not a childish discomfort with a religious image. A real physical aversion. He would not walk past it without covering his face, and once he attempted to pull it from the wall. He was 7. He did not have the vocabulary to explain what bothered him about it. The mother had noticed that the guardian angel prayer they had said with him since infancy had stopped working on him in the way prayers are supposed to work. He would close his mouth and refuse to say the words. Not defiantly, the way a child refuses to eat vegetables, quietly, with a kind of flatness that she found harder to bear than defiance. My name is Father Chad Ripperger. I am a Thomistic philosopher and a trained exorcist, one of a small number still operating in the church with proper authorization. I did not seek this work. It was assigned to me. I have been doing this for a long time. What I am about to describe is a composite of cases encountered across decades of ministry. No single child or family is being named or identified. I work from patterns documented across many situations. And I tell you this once because you deserve to know the ground you stand on when you listen to a priest speak about these things. The church has always known that children are not exempt from spiritual warfare, and the tradition has always responded to that fact with specific practical instruments. Matthew 18:10, our Lord himself said this in language that admits no ambiguity. See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that their angels in heaven always behold the face of my Father who is in heaven. Notice the present tense, always. Not when the child is baptized and at intervals thereafter, always. The guardian angel of a child is before the face of God at this moment, engaged in a mission that is real, active, and hierarchically ordered in the way Aquinas describes in the Summa Theologiae, question 113 of the Prima Pars. That mission is custody, a specific assignment with a specific scope. It operates within the order of grace. The angel does not override the will of the household. For 400 years, the church provided the laity with specific prayers to address situations in their homes that they could not explain. Most parishes stopped teaching them after 1965. Now, they have all been compiled into a concise, practical guide. Keep it near the door and read the first page tonight. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first pinned comment. He does not act independently of the means the church provides. When those means are removed, when the holy water is not present, when the sacramentals have been boxed up or never acquired, when the prayer that names the angel has stopped being said, the protection does not automatically collapse, but the conditions under which the guardian angel exercises his mission change. The legal ground, as I have come to describe it after years of working in this area, shifts, and a patient enemy, one whose intelligence, as Aquinas is precise about in questions 50 through 64 of the Prima Pars, was not diminished by the fall, only his righteousness. A patient enemy notices these shifts. This particular family had been Catholic for generations. The father's own father had hung a crucifix over every exterior doorway in the house and kept a statue of Our Lady in the living room. His mother had a small bottle of holy water on her nightstand that she refilled from the church font every Sunday. He himself had a brown scapular from his first communion, long since misplaced in a move. When he and his wife married and settled into their current home, they had said the sort of thing young Catholic couples say. They would get around to having the house blessed. They would establish their sacramental routines. They would raise the children in the faith. They intended all of it. They had never quite done it. The crucifix that hung over the child's bed had come from a discount store and had never been brought to a priest for blessing. The small font by the front door had run dry some months earlier and had never been refilled. The family prayed before meals with reasonable consistency, but had let the nightly rosary lapse. The guardian angel prayer, the child's version, the one generations of Catholic children had said before sleep had become sporadic, then occasional, then absent. None of these omissions constitute mortal sin in themselves. I am not cataloging failures of a family that was trying. I am describing the particular kind of spiritual exposure that results when the sacramental environment of a home is allowed to thin out over time, gradually, through ordinary neglect and the pressures of modern life. Because the enemy does not need an invitation of the dramatic kind. He is precise, patient, observant. A lapsed sacramental household is not invisible to him. And the corner of the boy's room had its own history. The father told me, when I pressed him on the physical history of the space, that the previous occupant of the house had kept what he described as spiritual things in that corner. Crystals arranged in a pattern, a dish of incense, something that functioned as a small altar, though the man had never spoken of it in those terms. The previous occupant had moved out 2 years before the family arrived. The objects were gone. But a spiritual claim planted in a space does not automatically dissolve when the person who planted it leaves. It needs to be deliberately displaced. That displacement had not occurred. The case I am describing was not. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote more than a dozen questions on how fallen angels operate. Most Catholics have never read one line of it. This archive gathers that teaching, the 1,614 rite, and 4 centuries of documented cases into a single reference. Read it slowly, 1 chapter a night. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first posted comment. Possession. I need to be clear about this because confusion in these categories leads to pastoral disasters. The tradition of Catholic demonology, Aquinas, the Roman ritual of 1,614, and the accumulated practice of the Church distinguishes carefully between temptation, which is universal, and operates entirely outside the will. Oppression, which is an external physical pressure on the body or environment. Obsession, which is an internal harassment of the faculties without possession of the will. Infestation, which attaches to a place or object rather than a person directly. And possession, the rarest and most severe category, in which an unclean spirit achieves a degree of control over the body. This child showed signs of infestation of the room and beginning obsession, not possession. The distinction is not academic. The remedy is proportionate to the diagnosis. The flatness in the boy's eyes when he sat up and stared, I mentioned it and I should describe it because it matters. Those of us who work in this area learn to read it. It is not the unfocused gaze of a sleepwalker. It is not wide-eyed terror. It is flat. The child is present in the body, but there is something else present in the space, something that has the attention of whatever faculty in the child is responding involuntarily. I have sat with children in this state. The eyes do not track. The face is still. When the pressure lifts, the child blinks, looks around, does not know why you are there. Flat, then present again. It is one of the more unsettling things I have witnessed regularly. The father asked me what to do. I told him. I told him first that the theological framework was not complicated. Matthew 18:10 had been read in the church for 2,000 years, and the church's response to that verse had always been practical. Arm the guardian angel's ministry with the instruments it requires. St. Thomas is specific. The angel has the mission, the capacity, and the divine authorization. What the angel needs from the family is their cooperation, expressed through the sacramental life of the home. You do not get the angel to do more by asking harder. You get him to do more by giving him more to work with. And then I told him exactly what to do that night. He needed to go to confession before anything else. Not as a preliminary step, not as a formality as the first action, because confession severs the legal claims that accumulate in a life imperfectly lived and that the enemy exploits as footholds. John 20:23, whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven them. That authority given to the church by Christ is not merely judicial in a nominal sense. It is operative. It changes the spiritual reality of the person who receives it. A father in a state of grace standing in his child's room exercises a different quality of authority over his domestic church than a father carrying unconfessed sin. After confession, that very night, he was to go to his son's room with blessed holy water. I had given him a bottle blessed with the traditional formula, with exercise salt, not the abbreviated blessing now common. He was to take some on his thumb and trace the sign of the cross on the sleeping child's forehead, not hard enough to wake him, deliberately, with attention to what he was doing. And he was to speak over the sleeping child, not mumbled, not muttered under his breath, spoken with authority quietly, but with the weight of a father exercising his priestly role over his domestic church. The words did not have to be precise. The posture had to be right. Something of this form: guardian angel of this child, assigned to him by Almighty God, I ask you by the authority given to me as his father and as a baptized Catholic to guard him through this night. Stand between him and every unclean spirit. Let nothing approach him that has not been permitted by God, and drive from this room anything that has established itself here without, right? Not a formula to be recited without engagement, a commission to be given by a man who means it. Then the St. Michael prayer, full voice, low but clear. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. I have said that prayer in rooms where I have watched the temperature change. I do not attribute causality without appropriate humility. I have seen it too many times in too many rooms to treat it as mere piety. He was to remove from the corner of the room and from the house entirely anything whose spiritual origin he could not verify. Not all religious objects, objects of unknown provenance, items from the previous occupant, anything purchased in environments where occult practice is normalized. He was to replace the unblessed crucifix over the child's bed with one properly blessed by a priest. I told him to take it to Mass with him and ask a priest to bless it before he hung it. He was to obtain a blessed image of Our Lady and place it visibly in the room, a framed image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, a holy card, a small statue that had been blessed. The miraculous medal on a cord around the child's neck or pinned to his pajamas. The sacramental content of the medal is real and has been ratified by the Church for nearly 2 centuries. And he was to pray with the child every night, the guardian angel prayer, not as a bedtime rhyme, as a prayer. As a parent, exercising genuine spiritual authority over his own family, naming the angel, naming the child, commissioning the angel to a specific duty. Children whose parents have done this consistently, I have seen this across the years, children who grow up with that prayer said over them nightly are differently situated spiritually than children who do not. The father went home that night and did these things. He had not gone to confession in over a year. He went the next morning. He returned that night with holy water and a blessed crucifix obtained from a traditional parish an hour from his home. He did everything I described. The boy did not wake that night. He woke the second night, briefly, did not sit up, did not stare at the corner. He turned over and went back to sleep. By the end of the week, the pattern had broken entirely. Now let me be honest about what that means and what it does not mean. I am not presenting this as a definitive, miraculous intervention. The Church is precise in how it speaks about sacramentals. They are not automatic. They operate through the disposition of the one who uses them and through the ministry of the angels whose cooperation they invoke. What this family did was restore the conditions under which the guardian angel could act with the full weight of his assigned mission. The sacramental life of the home, holy water, blessed crucifix, blessed image of Our Lady, the medal, the prayer, said with authority, these are not ornamental. They are the material through which the Church's protection operates at the household level. The Curé d'Ars, Jean-Marie Vianney, who died on 4 August 1859, endured direct demonic assault for the better part of his priestly life. He called it the grappen, the gripper. They would knock him from his bed, set fire to the presbytery, fill the building with noise. His response was never to engage it in argument or to confront it directly on its own terms. His response was sacramental. Daily Mass offered with complete devotion, hours before the Blessed Sacrament, confession received frequently. He understood by long experience what the Church teaches formally. The demonic cannot defeat what it cannot touch, and what it cannot touch is a soul in grace, sustained by the sacramental life, sheltered by its proper guardians. Padre Pio received the stigmata on 20 September 1918, and he reported encounters with demonic entities throughout his priestly life, some of them violent in the physical sense. He was also one of the most confessing priests in the Church's recent history. He heard confessions for most of his waking hours, year after year, because he understood that confession was not merely a pastoral service, it was defensive. It severed the legal claims through which the enemy establishes and maintains his footholds. A confessor who takes that seriously is doing spiritual warfare as much as a priest who performs a formal exorcism. Dr. Richard Gallagher, a psychiatrist who has worked alongside exorcists in clinical consultation for decades, has documented publicly what he has observed in cases referred to him by priests and bishops. His professional training is the opposite of credulous. What he documents is consistent with what the tradition teaches. Authentic cases of diabolical infestation do not present like psychosis or delusion, and the remedy that works is not pharmaceutical. Now I need to speak plainly about why these cases are becoming more common. Not because the enemy has grown stronger. The hierarchy of supernatural reality does not change. What has changed is what is on our side. After the close of the Second Vatican Council in 1965, the Church in the West entered a period of catechetical collapse that is not honestly disputable. A Pew Research survey from 2019 found that 69% of American self-identified Catholics do not believe in the real presence, that the Eucharist is truly and substantially the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, not a symbol. This is not a peripheral doctrine. This is the central act of Catholic worship, the most powerful sacramental reality available to any person in the state of grace. A church that does not teach this will not produce households that receive it worthily. Households that do not receive it worthily are households that have effectively disarmed their primary protection without knowing it. The guardian angel assigned to a child in such a household is not less capable. The child is not less loved by God. But the instruments through which that protection operates in the material world, the sacraments received in a state of grace, the sacramentals properly blessed and properly used, the prayer of parents who understand what they are doing, those instruments have been degraded quietly and over time. And the results are what I see in my work. The 1,999 rite of exorcism made formal exorcism practically inaccessible in most dioceses. Multiple psychiatric evaluations, episcopal approval, extensive documentation requirements. I understand from one perspective, but whose practical effect in most dioceses has been to render the Church's most powerful public instrument of demonic expulsion unavailable in the very era when the sacramental environment of Catholic homes has been most thoroughly stripped. The bishops of the 4th and 5th centuries did not face this combination. We do. California enacted no-fault divorce in 1969. Within a decade, it had spread through the English-speaking world. The assault on the family as the domestic church was not incidental. A home without stable sacramental life, without the father and mother in agreement about what they are protecting, is a spiritually exposed home. Children sleeping in rooms that were never blessed, wearing no sacramentals, receiving no guardian angel prayer, in families where the father has been catechized out of understanding his priestly role over his household. These are the cases. I say all of this transparently. I do not claim certainty about every individual case or what God permits in his particular governance of any given family. That is above my knowledge. What I can tell you is what has worked consistently across 2,000 years of the Church's practice. This week, not when you feel spiritually prepared, not next month, this week, go to confession. Bring whatever has accumulated. The sacrament severs what the enemy uses as legal ground. It is not optional. It is the first move. Receive the Eucharist worthily at Holy Mass. If you have been receiving while aware of mortal sin, go to confession first, then receive. The real presence is the most powerful sacramental force you can bring into your life and your family's life. The demonic cannot abide direct proximity to it. That is documented in the Church's practice across centuries of exorcism work. Have your home blessed by a priest using the full rite. Find one willing to do it properly. This matters more than most Catholics currently understand. Acquire holy water blessed with the traditional formula, with exorcised salt. Place it at your front door. Bless your children with it before they sleep. Trace the cross on their foreheads and say their names. Place a properly blessed crucifix over every bed, an image of Our Lady in your children's rooms. The brown scapular on children old enough to wear it, not as a lucky charm, but as a sacramental, a sign of consecration to Our Lady's care, carrying the promise the Church has ratified for centuries. Pray the guardian angel prayer with your children every night. Look at them while you say it. Say it as a commission, not a rhyme. Pray the St. Michael prayer over the household. These prayers are not decorative, they are operative. Consecrate your family to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is a formal act with real spiritual weight, encouraged by the Church for centuries and given urgency by Our Lady's words at Fatima in 1917. Remove from your home objects of occult origin, tarot cards, Ouija boards, crystals acquired for spiritual purposes, statues of non-Christian deities, anything whose spiritual provenance you cannot verify. They are not decorations. In the tradition of the Church, they are doors. Pray the Rosary as a family, daily, imperfectly, present. Find a spiritually sound priest for ongoing direction. Not every priest working today has been formed to take these realities seriously. The formation collapse after 1965 affected the priesthood as much as the laity. Find a confessor who has not been catechized out of the tradition. Your community matters too. The Church was never designed to be practiced in isolation. Form your children. Tell them who their guardian angel is. Teach them the prayer that names that angel. Let them know they are not alone in the dark. The Church has come through worse eras than this. It survived the Arian crisis of the 4th century, when the majority of bishops in the East fell into formal heresy and Athanasius stood effectively alone in defending the divinity of Christ. Athanasius contra mundum, Athanasius against the world. And it was Athanasius who outlasted every emperor who tried to break him because he had the truth and he did not blink. It survived the French Revolution, which drowned priests in the Loire and closed every church in France, and the Church came back. It survived 70 years of organized communist effort to eliminate Christianity from Eastern Europe and failed to do so. The Church does not survive because of its administrative structures or its cultural prestige. It survives because of its saints, ordinary and otherwise, who took the sacramental life seriously, armed their households, said their prayers, and gave the enemy no legal ground. Theological hope is not optimism. Optimism is a temperament. It looks at circumstances and expects them to improve. Hope is a virtue anchored not in present conditions, but in the promises of God, which have held for 2,000 years through considerably worse conditions than these. God is with us. He has always been with us. The question is whether we will be with Him. Next, we will look at what happens when a family has not merely allowed the sacramental life to lapse, but has actively opened a door deliberately, in some cases, or unwittingly, through an object brought into the home, or a practice pursued for reasons that seemed harmless. The door opened in ignorance is still a door. And the work of closing it is harder and more specific than what I have described tonight. We will go through it step by step.